Hi, this is my video blog number 2, and that means this is the second one I have done. And I'm having great fun with this. In fact, I've discovered that it helps me be more creative and get more work done on the films that I should be working on right now instead of doing this. But then after I'm done with this, I'll be able to go do more work on those. So it all kind of works out. I'm shooting inside my kitchen today. It's very cleverly framed so that you cannot see all of the dirty dishes or whatever, but you can see I have these very beautiful colored glass bottles in the window over the sink, which I adore, and the light looks beautiful coming through them. Ah, it's hot. It's coffee. It is coffee from the French market in New Orleans. It's chicory and coffee, but it is in a mug from the Original Pantry in downtown LA. Original Pantry is a wonderful restaurant. It's a bit of a landmark. I think it's been around since about 1924, and they've never been without a customer. They're always open, that sort of a place, and it's an old-fashioned American diner, and they have a lot of different steaks on the menu. But when I was in film school at USC, we were editing on moviolas, which are upright machines that edited film and sound on magnetically striped sound on film. So, quite often, we would be working very late in what they called the bullpen with about 13 or 14 of these moviolas set up. And you would be working away and editing, and eventually you would find yourself waking up, and you would be asleep, and you would be laying on the picture head of the moviola, and you would wake up and you would have a dent in your face from the picture head. And then you would get in your car and drive to the Pantry restaurant and have ham, steak, and eggs and coffee, and that would get you enough energy to get through your classes until you go home about 3 or 4 in the afternoon and collapse and go to sleep. USC film school was an amazing experience for me, and I will tell you more about that later. I have had the great fortune of directing Carla Laemmle in 3 feature films. Now, Carla is one of the last surviving silent movie stars. I think it's her and Lupita Tovar. Right now, Carla is 102 years old. She was in Dracula in 1931. She has the first lines in that movie, so she's sort of credited with having the first lines of dialogue in a talkie horror film. She was also in Phantom of the Opera in 1925 with Lon Chaney. So I have directed somebody who was directed by Todd Browning, and I have directed somebody who worked with, I think it was King Vidor did that. I'll have to look it up. But worked with Lon Chaney. And she grew up on the Universal Studios lot, and Mary Philbin was her best friend. Mary Philbin starred in Phantom of the Opera. And Carla Laemmle played the prima ballerina in the ballet sequence. And she's seen briefly in the film, but it's an amazing thing that she's in that film and that she's the niece of Carla Laemmle and that I have worked with her. She's friends with my friend Tom Tangen, who's a producer I worked with, and that is how I directed her originally in Pool Time, and then in The Extra, and then in Mansion of Blood. In Pool Time, she plays a neighbor who has a discussion with one of the guy's mothers, and it's a wonderful scene with a beautiful score that Rami Tateshi wrote for that little sequence. And then in The Extra, she plays a very brief role as a cameo as a party guest. And then when Tom came to me and we were doing Mansion of Blood with Gary Busey and Robert Picardo and all these people, and he's like, we got to put Carla in this movie. I was like, okay, but she's going to play a real role. You know, a real role. You know, a real character in the film. I have a major role in the film. So she's in quite a few scenes in the movie. We worked it out so that she has a very important character role in the film to the story and the plot. And also, it's just really neat if you know the significance of who she is in our film. I can't wait for that to come out. I actually have 4 feature films in post-production right now. First 2 films I directed, Surge of Power and Pool Time, are out, available at Netflix and Amazon and all that stuff. 3 films that I directed since then, Visitor from Planet Omicron, The Extra, and Mansion of Blood, are all in post-production. Omicron is currently in post-production hell, doing visual effects, and actually we're very close to finishing, which is wonderful. The Extra is completely picture-locked and has about 5 effect shots that need to be dropped in, which are sort of matte paintings, and Raimi Tateshi is writing the score for that, and he's got about the first hour is already done. And Mansion of Blood, we are editing, and the first hour of that has been assembled and is ready to be turned over to the sound editors and all that. When I went to go work on the film Cotton, originally it was discussed that I might direct the film. That was very preliminary, and it didn't work out because the writer, Marty Madden, who's a wonderful man and very talented, wanted to direct the film. And I was completely supportive of that because I understand wanting to direct films, especially since it was his baby. And it's a subject matter that was very near and dear to his heart. So they were putting the film together, and they were going to make me a co-producer, and they were, wanted me to be involved, and it was Ray Kuroga, Tom Tangen, and J.J. Rogers, and a lot of people that are great friends and look after my interests. And it kind of became apparent to me that maybe they didn't really need me on the project, and I had 3 features in post-production. So I said to them, that's okay. We'll work again on other films, and I've got these films that need to be finished. And I would really, that's fine. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Let's you guys go off and make Cotton. I called Tom, and I left him this voicemail. And Tom called me back and left me a pretty funny voicemail. And it was very, very flattering. And he basically said, Mike, I really, really need you on this project. I really, really, really need you on this project. I went to a meeting. I reviewed the script. And it was great, bunch of people. And we were all kind of getting to know each other. And I was sitting there, and they were like, it's going to be this amount of money. And I'm like, okay. And we're going to do this many weeks of pre-production. This is the start date. I'm like, okay. And then they were like, it's going to be probably a 4-week shoot. And I was like, okay. And so then they said, and we're going to have you do second unit, director. And I was like, oh, okay, that's great. Second unit director does, tabletop stuff and insert stuff and a lot of action stuff and driving shots and establishing shots and shoots the photos that end up on the set, the family in the background and stuff. And then they said, and we're going to have you join the DGA. And I said, okay. And I said, what? They said, yeah, you're going to have to join the DGA. Because, we want to make more films with you, and this is a DGA show, and you're going to be second unit director, so you're going to have to join the DGA. And I said, okay. And I went and I looked up some information about the DGA. Now, when I did Surge of Power, I had called the DGA and said, how does this work? And they said, well, you don't have to worry about it because, when you're hired by a company that's, a DGA signatory, then, you worry about it. So I kind of forgotten about it, and I make these very low-budget indie films. And it turned out on Cotton that one of the reasons that they wanted me there is I'm very good at scheduling breakdowns, and I worked very closely with J.J. Rogers on that. And they have this Movie Magic scheduling software. And they take the script and they import it into the software, and it tells them a breakdown of what they need, what days, and that sort of thing. And one of the things you should know about Cotton is that a couple of years ago they got together quite a bit of money and they tried to make it, and the film fell apart. It wasn't anybody's fault. It's just a rare skill to be able to put together films for not very much money. So when they got in touch with Tom was like, we can do this as a SAG Ultra low budget show. And they were like, prove it. So the budget was still a little high. And so I looked at the script, and I noticed that immediately there was a young girl in the film. She was the rancher's daughter, and she's in exactly 30 scenes out of exactly 100 scenes in the movie. And computer software had scheduled her for 17 out of 20 shooting days, which is an unusual ratio. And there are reasons why that might happen. But I started looking through the program and the breakdowns, and it became apparent to me that the program is designed for big studio projects where it assumes that you have everything you need all the time, which is very expensive. Having all the actors there every day and bringing everything to every location, that sort of thing. So I went into Excel and I did a manual breakdown on the script, which is very labor intensive, but that way we were able to make it fit the budget. And so that was one of my major contributions to Cotton. It stars Gary Cole and Eric Scott Smith, who's wonderful. And Gary's also quite wonderful. Gary ended up wearing a lot of my wardrobe in the film. I brought 42 different pieces of wardrobe to the set. Everybody was chipping in. And it turns out that Gary is my exact size, so he wore a lot of my wardrobe because, you know, it's the story that took place over many months, and so he needed a lot of changes in wardrobe. So that's one of the ways you economize when you're making very low budget films. And yeah, we did buy him wardrobe, but you know, if there was stuff that we had that would work, we used it. And it really bothers me when you know, I'm directing on a movie, even second unit, and they're using my wardrobe, and the actors always look better in my clothes than I do. So, all this is going on, and I end up in the DGA. And the DGA is wonderful because if you're working on very low budget stuff, they are completely supportive. They, you know, low budget documentary people and people who do like amazingly expensive films and people who work in episodic television, and just, it's a very eclectic bag of people. And they're all pretty much terrific. And so, I'm in the DGA.